So you want to switch your computer from Windows to Linux. Well, today is the day because this video will teach you all that you need to know about the 5 things that you should do before making the jump from Windows to Linux. Welcome back to the channel. It is me and this is my channel where we learn how to program and make cool stuff with computers. In last week's video I asked if you were interested in seeing a video on how to dual boot both Windows and Linux on the same computer so that you can try out Linux without completely wiping out your current operating system, which you probably have spent hundreds of hours customizing. And boy, did I get a resounding yes from you guys, so here it is. Now, there are 2 things that you should be aware of before starting this process. The first one is that depending on how big your Windows partition is, you might need an external USB drive with at least 5 GB of space for this process. And the second thing is that this process assumes that you already have downloaded the Linux ISO image and created a bootable USB drive with it. If you don't know how to do that, I cover these steps in the video how to install Linux Mint, so make sure to watch that one after this one. The first thing that you should do before switching your operating system is to make sure that you back up any files that you care about and that you would not want to lose. Now this should be pretty straightforward if you follow the CIE backup strategy, which means that you have 3 copies of all of your important files, stored on at least 2 different types of storage, one of them being an external storage device such as a hard drive or SSD, or even cloud storage like OneDrive or Google Drive. And one of the reasons why I recommend having at least 2 different storage devices is because hard drives tend to fail, and if you only have your important files on one hard drive, then once that fails, those files are gone forever. And yes, you can always retrieve some of them using data recovery software, but that is a topic for another video anyway. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start by resizing the partitions on your hard drive. To do that, open up gparted by searching for it in your Applications menu. Now if this is the first time that you are opening up gparted, you will see this warning. Go ahead and click on the Settings button. Go to the Device tab and then select the hard disk that you want to resize the partitions on, then click Apply and close the Settings window. Now you should see the hard disk with its corresponding partitions. Now depending on how many partitions you have, this could look very different than what you see here. Mine happens to be just a simple setup with 1 FI partition, 1 Windows partition and 1 Linux swap partition. Now notice that each partition has a certain amount of space allocated to it. The first one is a system partition that cannot be resized, the second one is the one that you will have to shrink, and the last one is the swap partition, which is basically used for hibernation. You will also have to shrink that one a little bit to make room for the new partition, which will be your new root partition. Now before you start moving around the partitions, make sure to remember the size of each one of them because you will have to input that manually later. Also, if you have more than 1 hard drive, make sure to select the right one and not move anything around on a hard drive that you do not want to modify anyway. When you are ready, click on the Resize button. Select the Windows partition and then drag the slider all the way to the left until you see how much space you want to allocate for Windows. Now keep in mind that this is up to you, but I would recommend at least 40 GB for Windows. Once you are done with that, click on the Swap button and select the Swap partition, then drag the slider until you have allocated enough space for it. Keep in mind that the space that you allocate here will be in addition to the space that you have currently allocated to the swap partition. I usually allocate around I times the amount of RAM that my computer has. Now that you have allocated the space for Windows and for swap, go ahead and select the free space and then click on the New button. From here, select the following. Use as a logical volume, select the entire free space, format it as ext and mount point should be at the root of the file system. Now notice how the mount point is currently set to boot, which is not correct. Click on Use instead and then type in /, then click Apply. This will create the new partition and resize the other ones accordingly. Now once you are done with that, click on the check button to verify that everything is alright. If it is, go ahead and click on Apply to commit the changes. Once the resizing is done, we Can now install Ubuntu. Restart your computer and boot into BIOS by pressing F5 during startup. In here, change the boot order so that the USB drive comes first and then save and exit. Now once your computer restarts, you should see the installer. Follow the steps on screen and select the language that you want to use, then click Continue. Next, select Erase Disk and install Ubuntu and then click Continue. Here you have the option to install the grub bootloader on the MBR of the first hard drive. If you select this option, it will overwrite the Windows bootloader with the grub bootloader. If you select the second option, it will install grub on the FI partition. I recommend that you choose the second option. Once that is done, click Continue. On the next screen, select whether you want to use encryption on your home folder. I personally do not encrypt anything because I do not care if someone steals my laptop with all of my files on it. But if you want to do that, then click the Use Encryption button and enter a password. Otherwise, just click the Do Not Encrypt option. Finally, select the keyboard layout that you want to use and click Continue. Now we can start the actual installation process. Select Normal Install Ubuntu, then click Continue, then select the region that you live in. Next, select whether you want to install additional software from third-party providers. I personally do not install any of them. Click Continue, then select whether you want to use network or proxy. I use network. Then select whether you want to use a local DNS server or a custom search engine. I use the default options. Now we have to create a user account. Give it a name, a username and a password, and then click Continue. Finally, we can confirm the changes that we want to make. Click Install Now. Then sit back and relax and let the installer do its work. Once it's done installing, you can restart the computer. Now the interesting thing is that when you restart your computer, it will take you to the grub boot menu where you can select either Windows or Ubuntu, but the problem is that it will only keep you in this menu for about 10 seconds. So if you want to have more control over this, you can hit escape and it will keep you in this menu indefinitely. Now this is useful if you are trying to figure out which operating system you want to use and you are not sure yet, but eventually you will have to pick one. To do that, open up the grub menu by hitting escape, then type in grub and hit enter. Now this will open up the grub command line interface where you can type various commands to manage the grub configuration. Type in grub set defaulting, hit enter, then type grub update and hit enter. What these two commands do is that they tell grub to always boot directly into Ubuntu instead of showing us the grub menu. If you ever wanted to see the grub menu again, just open this terminal and type grub set default then grub update, and that's it. Now you know how to switch from Windows to Linux. Now obviously this was a very high-level overview and there are tons of things that you can customize to make your experience better. For example, in the beginning I mentioned that you should install additional software, but I did not really mention what that entails. Well, for starters, I install Firefox and Thunderbird because I use them as my daily driver email client and web browser. I also install OBS Studio because I use it to record all of my videos, and I install VLC Media Player because I use it to play back my videos when I am editing them and when I am just looking for something to watch on the internet. Another one is called Shutter, which is basically the equivalent of the snipping tool on Windows, and I use it to take screenshots of my desktop. Now if you want to know what other programs I use on Linux, let me know in the comments below and I will make a video on it. And since we are talking about customizing your Linux experience, I have a question for you. How would you like to receive the updates? Well, if you like to be notified every time I upload a new video, you can subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. And if you want to go beyond that and help me make more videos like this one, you can consider supporting me through various platforms. I post regular updates on each platform and you can choose the one that you like the most. As usual, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.